If anyone ever tries to write the history of the United States without mentioning General Motors, then you are facing an enemy of all progressive mankind. Leave this libel aside and don't even think about it. General Motors, with all its ups and downs, has been keeping up with American history for more than a century, embodying the American lifestyle. The origins of this corporation, as well as its development stages, were also very America-like. This doesn't mean that Buick ranks higher among the General Motors brands, it is just that historically in 1899, another small batch workshop was created in Detroit, which assembled petrol wagons out of whatever was available and tried to sell them at a higher price. The name of this joint was Buick Auto Vim and Power Company. They repaired and assembled gasoline engines there, which were sometimes mounted on a frame with bicycle wheels. The company was not even registered. Among its employees, there was also engineer Walter Marr, who built the company's first car. The car was named Buick, in honor of the company's director and founder, David Dunbar Buick. As you may have noticed, at that time there was a trend to give companies the last names of their founders. Officially, the company had been operating since 1903, when the director decided to move production from Detroit to his hometown of Flint, also in Michigan. Ironically, the company registration process almost coincided with the announcement of its bankruptcy in 1904. On the other hand, it is not so surprising, since there were a lot of competitors at the time, in particular Ford, Dodge, and Cadillac. No one knows how this story would have ended if not for third-party help provided by effective management. Well, this pertains to another story, not quite a car story. The persona of William Crapo Durant is supposed to stand beside that of Henry Ford in the list of creators of American automobile history. Durant was born on December 8, 1861 in Boston, Massachusetts. He never finished school because he needed the money. He worked at his grandfather's sawmill, who, by the way, had been governor of Michigan until 1868. Durant quickly realized that cutting boards didn't bring him much money, so he partnered with Josiah Dallas Dort, and together they set up the Flint Road Cart Company, involved in making horse-drawn vehicles. Durant had only $1,500 in his pocket, and most of it was borrowed. He invested every penny he had in his business. Things went well. The company in Flint sold 50,000 strollers a year, almost becoming a national industry leader. However, who cares about a horse-drawn carriage when there's an automotive story going on in Flint and neighboring Detroit? The money is different here. So Durant started buying up small car companies, most of them craftsmen, which couldn't survive under tough competition. This is where the paths of the Durant businessman and the sinking Buick company crossed. The company was bought out and brought back in the market. Olds Motor Vehicle Company Incorporated is another branch that reinforced the Durant Corporation. The company is considered the oldest in the United States because its first car was built as early as 1887 by one of its founders, Ransom Olds. 2 years later, he announced the merger of his two companies, Olds Motor Vehicle and Olds Gasoline Engine Works of Lansing, with a registered capital of $500,000. Thus, Olds Motor Works was formed in 1890. A few years later, the company built a real manufacturing plant in Detroit, positioning itself as the manufacturer of the most luxurious cars in America. At that time, almost every company was trying to market itself that way. Good company, we should take it, thought William Durant, and bought a controlling stake from the Olds brothers. Thus, in 1907, Durant could declare the establishment of a powerful corporation to produce General Motors cars. And so, he did. Consequently, in 1907, a new American multi-brand corporation was announced. Durant's intentions still involved the purchase of Henry Ford's business. However, Ford neither shared the concept of General Motors management nor wanted to become dependent on investors again, something he had just started to get out of. Besides, he had his own vision for the development of the automobile industry in the United States, and we talked about it in a previous video on our channel. Henry Ford and William Durant clearly differ in their views. Ford's goal was to flood America with cheap but well-made cars that could be repaired in any rural workshop. Durant had bigger plans, since unlike Ford, he was an experienced businessman, not an engineer. He wanted different people to buy different cars, both expensive, very expensive, and cheap. Obviously, it was not enough to build one assembly line and put together one model in different configurations. The best thing would be if there were several brands. Each of these brands should gain a foothold in specific social groups. Each brand should define the status of the owner of the car, so that a buyer has always a space to further growing among his compatriots. It seems we got distracted. Anyway, Durant kept buying up automotive repair shops all along the coast. Thus, GM included Buick, Oldsmobile, Cadillac, Oakland, which would later be renamed Pontiac, Ewing, Marquette, and other cars, as well as Reliant and Rapid trucks. So, the dynasty evolved. As a result, on September 16, 1908, General Motors was almost fully formed. Almost, because all that was left to do was tame one more stubborn company. On November 3, 1911, the Chevrolet Motor Company of Michigan was incorporated in Detroit. It was founded by Louis Chevrolet, a strong man of Swiss descent. He was a natural-born racer and a pretty good engineer. Like everyone else, Louis wanted to sell more and invest less. For example, the first Chevy Classic 6 models released in 1912, 1913, and 1914 were almost identical. In 1912, the first year of Chevy production, they were priced at $2,150, a mind-boggling figure for that time. This was even though Ford was selling slightly more modest cars but 5 times cheaper. So how can we talk about conquering the market? Almost at the same time, in 1910, William Durant started to lose influence in the newly formed General Motors because of his debts to many banks. Simply put, the bankers' credit of trust in William was lost. Upon leaving the position as the head of the corporation, Durant did not give up the idea of developing the automobile concern, so he was looking for a way to apply his outstanding managerial skills. Fortunately, destiny offered him Louis Chevrolet's company. Well, Louis himself needed help. As a result, Chevrolet Motor Company showed good sales growth for the next few years, and new models with more affordable prices were introduced. New options like electric starter and electric lights also became available. Chevy production rose to 70,000 pieces in 1916 and 125,882 the following year. In 1917, the first Chevrolet V8 engine was introduced in the D Series. At this point, our attentive viewers are like, wait, in the previous video you said that Ford made the first mass-produced V8. Yes, Ford did make the first mass-produced V8, and Chevrolet only put it on custom and consequently expensive models. As one might expect, Louis and William Durant took different paths. They disagreed on price and design. Durant was committed to developing cars for everyday use, while Chevrolet was more concerned with luxury cars. As a result of these disputes, Chevrolet sold its stock to Durant but kept the racer's name. This was what Durant wanted. Chevrolet became one of the most powerful manufacturers in the country. By 1916, Durant was ready to compete with other big names in the industry. In fact, the 1916 Chevrolet 490 was an attempt to compete with the Ford Model T. By then, Chevrolet was prospering, with production plants across the country, even in Flint and New York. With some help, Durant finally managed to buy General Motors stock. When we simply say bought shares and became the president of a corporation, only a few people understand what it all means. Theoretically, there is nothing complicated about it. In our video about Ford, we already mentioned this financial tool. If the company is privately owned and all its assets are owned by one person, then we would say that the Teapot repair shop belongs to Mr. Teapot, for example. If Mr. Teapot decided to set up not only a repair shop but also the production of teapots, he would hardly possess enough money for machinery, raw materials, and labor. Therefore, the costs of production must be shared with someone. It could be a bank, it could be a private investor, or it could be a group of workers who, often unknowingly, own a piece of the enterprise. Each piece of property is expressed in shares, and the share is backed by real money. You can sell it, buy it, give it away, lose it while playing cards, and so on. So Durant didn't win General Motors stock at cards because he already had enough money. Durant regained the title of president of GM in 1917, and Chevrolet merged with General Motors as a separate unit. Over the next few years, General Motors improved its quality standards and expanded its model range. At the same time, Durant kept the division's priorities well separated. Cadillac had to produce only premium luxury cars at sky-high prices. Buick brand ranked second, whose cars were cheaper but also fell within the interests of wealthy businessmen and bankers. Pontiac was targeted to the middle class, and they also produced service cars, for example, for traffic police and other services. Chevrolet Motor Company always stood apart and enjoyed some liberties. Therefore, this brand had its own class of connoisseurs. And of course, Chevrolet covered the low-budget sector of the U.S. car fleet. Inexpensive cars, trucks, pickups, and later SUVs and buses, heavy trucks and tractors. In short, GM was well prepared for the Great Depression. By this period, GM had developed the General Motors Truck Company, later known as GMC, Chevrolet Motor Company of Michigan, General Motors Export Company, and General Motors of Canada. Thanks to the increased capacity and numerous plants abroad, including Canada, China, Denmark, Belgium, Brazil, France, Germany, Australia, and South Africa, the 1929 Great Depression had little impact on General Motors. Moreover, the company managed to show growth and not slip out of the Big Three.